Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm back with another video. We're in Oklahoma in our new house. I started school and it's been really fun. And today I'm going to make a video about NBDE. And I have to tell you, this is going to be my last video about NBDE because A, it's expiring. NBDE is going to be done in August, but foreign trained dentists, which are most of you guys, will not be able to take it in May. So a lot of people now ask me if it's better for them to take NBDE or go for INBDE, and at this point of time, if you did not register, if you did not start studying for NBDE, it would probably be better for you to take INBDE at this point because time is kind of running out for NBDE. So this is going to be my last video about NBDE, and I'm going to talk about all the books that you can use that are out there for NBDE preparation. After saying that, I want to let you know that certainly that exam is changing, but the dentistry per se is not changing. You can still use the same books to study for NBDE, for INBDE, for new exam. And frankly, if you're planning to buy these books, they're probably going to be much cheaper because hopefully companies are going to start coming up with INBDE books, but the information is still the same. So I encourage you to use these books even though if you're studying for INBDE. So first resource I've used is Facebook. Facebook is a great resource for any exam preparation, frankly. It doesn't matter which exam you're studying for. There are Facebook groups for everything, and you can find people who are also studying for that exam. And if you don't understand something, if you have questions, you can ask them. And they also share books, they share their notes, so you can find additional study resources there. That's why I always send everybody to Facebook. Just find people who are also struggling with this exam, and they will definitely help you out. So that is resource number one. Resource number two is First Aid. Everybody knows that book. It's a pretty popular book. Majority of people actually use that for preparation for NBDE. I used it in the beginning and I didn't like it, and I will tell you why. So the book is structured as kind of a conspect, if you don't know what it is. It's kind of bite-sized pieces of information. There's no text per se, there's no paragraphs, it's just bullet points of what you need to know about a specific subject. It's very convenient for people who already know a lot about who feel confident in the information that they're learning, who for example recent grads or people who retain information very well. It will not give you a comprehensive preparation from scratch. If you know nothing, don't use this book. You will only get yourself confused. And I personally couldn't particularly read it and study it because it didn't have text. My attention span is just not long enough to jump from one bullet point to another, and I could not memorize them all. I just don't believe in that. So it did not particularly work for me, but a lot of my classmates who are in my group now, they used First Aid to study for their NBDE, and obviously all of them passed. So it's a good resource if you know majority of information already. It's definitely not going to cover all of your bases. So the other part of that book is Q&A. They have First Aid Q&A book, and it is awful. I've talked about it previously in my How to Study for NBDE videos, I believe, and I talked very badly about it. I actually found it in the library. This book was free for me and I used it just because it was free, but the question difficulty, it's just the questions and answers basically, and they're based on the First Aid book. And the questions I felt like were too difficult they're not the same level as actual exam questions. I understand them making it more difficult, but sometimes it was just bizarre. If you used it, you will probably understand. They're asking things that are too specific. The NBDE wouldn't ask that. And the second point that I had, I stopped using this book after it just started having so many mistakes. Like, you would answer the question, you would see it's wrong based on the answer sheet, and you'll go back to the book, to First Aid book, and you will see that you actually answered correctly. So there are a lot of lapses, a lot of mistakes in that particular book. So I felt like it was a waste of my time to mess with the book that difficulty doesn't match, and also see all the mistakes that I didn't make. I just confused myself with all these wrong answers, and God knows how many more mistakes I missed, and I didn't go for the books to check, and I kind of remembered it this way. So I felt like it hurt me more than helped. So I do not recommend the Q&A first aid book at all. Next resource that you can use is Dental Decks. I use Dental Decks a lot. When I first started studying, I actually enjoyed it a lot because I like that it has a structure of a question on one side, so it kind of makes you think and remember, and the whole answer and the whole book paragraph on the other side of the card. And you can just read through the card and it will feel like you're reading a book. I felt it was good at first, but then the more I went into it, and when I moved on to other subjects, I started with anatomy, and like, yeah, you can read a lot about anatomy, but I realized that I also remember a lot of stuff. And when I just wanted to read something about specific subjects, there is no content, there is no index card that I can just, like in a book, I can find a page and just read that. You have to scroll through all the cards to actually find what you want to read about. Or for example, when I started doing my tests and actually doing practice tests, and I wanted to read something about my mistake, I would made a mistake and I wanted to read up on the subject, it was very difficult to find it in the decks. I had to scroll through all of them. You couldn't just, you couldn't find it. It's not easy to find something you're looking for fast. So that was my problem with Dental Decks. Besides, I didn't like that you have so many of them. It's overwhelming. You don't need most of them. It's impossible to read the whole thing. So I thought it was just a waste of time, kind of. I didn't go through all of the decks. I think you can comprehensively prepare for the exam just on the Dental Decks, if that's your style of studying, if you actually want to read through the whole thing. I think it gives you just enough information if you just read them. So I don't mind them. I think it's a good resource, but it just didn't work for me because I didn't have time to go through all of the decks, and I didn't think that the style of presenting the information was convenient. And that's my only problem with them. So if you like them, if you feel that you are go through all of them, and you will like set aside the subjects that you want to go through again, or just, leave those cards that you don't know aside so you can go through them again, I think that would work. I think it might be good, but it just did not work for me personally. Next popular book that a lot of people use is Mosby's. Everybody knows Mosby's. It's a huge book. It's very thick. And I hated Mosby's. When I started reading Mosby's, it's very dense. It's a very dense book. There's a lot of information, of course, but it's impossible to go through all of it. It's packed very weirdly. It's very boring. The read is very boring. It's very weirdly structured. They kind of do also bullet points, but bullet points are much larger than the first aid. So they give you everything. They give you dentistry from start to end. But will you realistically read through all of this and focus enough to actually comprehend everything it says? I don't think so. So if you're buying books and if you actually want to spend money, I would skip Mosby's altogether, because chances are you're not going to go through it. It's not convenient. Maybe if you just want to read up on specific subjects and you actually want to have your index, like I complained about Dental Decks, if you have the same problem, Mosby's could be good. But honestly, when I started reading it, I found so many mistakes and they were so obvious. I wish I had a book on me so I could read them. Now I don't remember them on the top of my head, and I just couldn't. A, I couldn't go them because of the difficulty of the book. It's very difficult to read. And B, off the top of my head, in the beginning of the book, I already found so many mistakes that I thought it just would not worth it for me. So I would not recommend Mosby's at all. Skip it altogether. I don't think it's possible to use it as a good resource because it's so dense and so thick. Next resource that everybody needs to use is released exams. So everybody's study style is different. My study style was, when I realized I can't go through all the reading, I never finished a single one of these books. I never read all of it altogether. I basically skipped the review part of my studying fully. I started from tests. And I thought that was a smart way, because I remembered something. I mean, I was a good student and I still remember something from my school. even if basic sciences, when I talk about part 1, I remembered stuff, so I didn't feel like I had to read through all of it. So I basically started taking tests, and when I was taking tests on some subjects, I would always get the answers correct. And on some subjects, when you take tests, you see that you have a gap. You need to read up on that. And you see that when you do tests, there's the only way to find out what you don't know when you actually are presented with a random question. If you can answer it or not. That's basically what NBDE altogether is. So I started doing the released exams, and I found what I needed to read from there, and I kind of went from there. And I used Wikipedia. I didn't want to look through any book to find out information I needed, because it's usually pretty, like, couldn't remember biochemistry very well. So if you need to read about one process, I would just Google it, and I would read up on Wikipedia what the process is. And I found that, because NBDE doesn't really go deep into biochemistry and stuff like that, or even anatomy, frankly. If you don't remember it, it's very easy to Google it, but you have to know what to Google, and for that I used released exams. I felt like it was very helpful for me. So released exams is a must for everybody, because if you read, you don't know what you remember. You don't know what information actually settled in your mind. You might have read it, but you didn't remember it, or you didn't understand it completely. And when you see a question on it or on a test, you can't answer it even though you went through this information during your review time. That's why released exams is something everybody should use for NBDE. Unfortunately for INBDE, there are no released exams because it's so new, and they didn't even frankly start it yet. But hopefully, if you're studying for future, if you're still in school and you're planning to pass your INBDE later years, you should also look up the released exams if they come up with that. The last resource that I want to mention is the book called Denton. I found that book when I was studying for my part 2, and I thought that book was amazing. It's very easily structured. It's not boring to read. It's structured like a regular book, like your regular textbook. It has a table of content, and it has subject laid out without any bullet points. It's just a paragraph. So it's not boring to read. It laid out pretty conveniently, pretty easily to understand. It's not like dense science. The language of the book was very convenient for me. And it has a lot of pictures. When you study subjects like prosthetics, you need a picture to understand what they're mentioning. Description would not be sufficient, and that was my problem with Bowes-Bees. They would describe it, but the pictures were very limited. And for a subject like anatomy and prosthetics, crowns, operative even, you need pictures. So I thought that was very convenient. I know that they have that book for part 1 and part 2. I used it only for part 2, but I would highly recommend you to look that up, because I think that's a perfect middle ground between first aid and Bowes-Bees, because it has just, it's more than first aid. The information is more than first aid, but it's comprehensible, much more comprehensible than Bowes-Bees. So those are all the books that I used, all the resources that I used. I didn't buy a single book. I found them all in PDFs online. A lot of people text me and ask me to share the links, and I hope you understand that I can't do that. It's illegal to spread the information like that. It's copyrighted, so I don't want to take responsibility for that. I'm sorry. Besides, I don't have them on my computer anymore. They're pretty heavy, and I passed my exam more than a year ago now. So I don't have them anymore, so please don't ask me to share them. But I encourage you to look online, and maybe in the Facebook groups, they float around. I encourage you to look around on the internet, because I'm sure they're there. And I used a website called script.com. It's a subscription website, but subscription is 30-day free trial, so you can download all the books and cancel the subscription. So don't let that stop you. And I hope you can find it there. If you don't, try and check Facebook groups. Another thing, last thing I wanted to mention is that all of these books have mistakes in them. Plenty of mistakes. So never try to memorize information, and always take it with a grain of salt, because the books are written not by the people who makes exams. Aside from released exams, all of the books are written by independent companies. They don't know what the examineers are gonna ask. They're based on the most popular questions on the test. So it's not guaranteed that they're correct. So don't try to memorize them, and prepare for a lot of mistakes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I wish you guys the best of luck. And this is going to be my last video about NBDE. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.